The air in Willow Creek, Ohio, smelled like rain and regret on a chilly October evening in 2025. Sarah Mitchell sat in her small living room, the kind with faded wallpaper and a coffee table cluttered with library books. At 45, she was a shadow of the woman she'd been, her brown hair streaked with gray, her hazel eyes dull from years of carrying a weight nobody could see. She worked at the town library, shelving books and helping kids with their homework, but her heart was somewhere else. It always was, ever since that night 15 years ago when her world burned down. Sarah's house was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. She sipped her coffee, cold now, and stared at a framed photo on the mantel. It was her and Emma, her daughter, taken a month before the fire. Emma was 5, all giggles and pigtails, her green eyes sparkling as she held a dandelion. Sarah's smile in the photo was real, the kind you don't realize you'll miss until it's gone. She set the mug down and stood, her knees cracking. It was time to tackle the basement again, a chore she'd been avoiding. The library was doing a donation drive, and Sarah figured it was time to clear out some junk, old clothes, broken lamps, boxes of memories she hadn't touched in years. She pulled on a sweater, grabbed a flashlight, and headed downstairs, the wooden steps groaning under her weight. The basement was a mess, damp and musty, with cardboard boxes stacked like a sad fortress. Sarah started sorting, tossing moth-eaten blankets into a trash bag, and setting aside books for the library. Then she saw it. A small metal box tucked behind a pile of Christmas decorations, rusted at the edges like it had been forgotten on purpose. She frowned, kneeling to pull it out. It was heavy, locked with a tiny padlock that looked more decorative than secure. Sarah's heart gave a little thud. She didn't remember this box. Not from her stuff, not from Emma's, not from anything. She pried at the lock with a screwdriver from a nearby toolbox, her hands shaky. The lock popped open and she lifted the lid, dust swirling in the beam of her flashlight. Inside was a jumble of papers, a couple of Polaroids and a folded letter. Sarah's breath caught. She picked up a Polaroid, her hands trembling. It was a girl, maybe 10 years old, with Emma's green eyes and a familiar smile, standing in front of a swing set. The photo was dated 2015, 5 years after the fire. Sarah's head spun. Emma had died in 2010. This couldn't be real. She unfolded the letter, the paper brittle with age. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. Sarah, I'm sorry. Emma didn't die in the fire. They took her. I couldn't stop them. Look for the truth. But be careful. They're watching. No signature, no name, just those words, jagged and desperate. Sarah's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, the letter clutched to her chest. Her mind raced. A storm of hope and dread. Emma alive? It was impossible, insane. The fire had taken everything. Her home, her daughter, her future. The police had said it was an electrical fault, a tragic accident. They'd found no trace of Emma's body, but everyone said it was because the flames were too hot, too fierce. Sarah had believed them. She'd had to survive. But this letter, this photo, they changed everything. She stared at the girl in the Polaroid, searching for Emma's face in those features. The nose, the dimple, the way her hair curled at the ends, it was her. It had to be. Tears stung Sarah's eyes, hot and sharp. She wanted to scream, to run, to do something, anything, but she just sat there, the basement closing in around her. 15 years ago, Sarah's life had been different. She was 30. A single mom with a laugh that could light up a room. She and Emma lived in a little house on Maple Street, with a swing in the backyard, and a kitchen that always smelled like cookies. Sarah worked at a daycare, and Emma was her shadow, always drawing pictures or singing made-up songs. They weren't rich, but they were happy. That night in 2010 started like any other. Sarah tucked Emma into bed, reading her favorite book, The Velveteen Rabbit. Emma clutched her stuffed bunny, her eyes heavy. "Love you, Mommy," she mumbled, already half asleep. Sarah kissed her forehead, turned on the nightlight, and closed the door. She was in the living room watching TV when she smelled smoke. It was faint at first, like someone burning leaves. Then she heard the crackle, saw the glow under Emma's door. Her heart stopped. She ran, screaming Emma's name. But the hallway was already thick with smoke. Flames licked the walls, the heat shoving her back. She tried to get to Emma's room, coughing, her eyes burning, but the fire was a monster, swallowing everything. Sarah stumbled outside, gasping as neighbors called 911. The fire trucks came, but it was too late. The house was a skeleton by the time they put out the flames. The firefighters searched for Emma, but there was nothing, no body, no sign. They said the fire was too intense, that it could've. Sarah couldn't hear the rest. She collapsed, sobbing, as the world she knew burned to ash. The days after were a blur. The police asked questions, their voices gentle but probing. Was the wiring old? Did she leave the stove on? Sarah shook her head. Numb. She hadn't done anything wrong. The final report called it an accident, a faulty outlet in Emma's room. The town rallied around her, bringing casseroles and condolences, but whispers followed. Maybe she wasn't careful enough. Poor kid didn't stand a chance. Sarah moved to a new house, a rental on the edge of town. She couldn't stay in the old neighborhood. Couldn't face the empty lot where her life had been. She quit the daycare job, took the library gig instead. It was quiet, safe, a place to hide from the world. But she never stopped aching for Emma. She kept a box of her things, a bunny, a drawing, a tiny pair of sneakers, and visited her grave every year, laying daisies on the stone. Now in the basement, that grave felt like a lie. Sarah's hands shook as she read the letter again. They took her. Who was they? Why would anyone take Emma? Her mind spun with questions, each one sharper than the last. She wanted to call the police, but something stopped her. The letter said they're watching. What if they were still out there? What if digging into this put her or Emma in danger? She stood, her legs wobbly, and carried the box upstairs. The living room felt too small, the walls pressing in. She set the box on the coffee table, staring at the Polaroid. The girl's smile was Emma's, but older, alive. Sarah's chest tightened, a mix of hope and terror. She didn't know what to believe, but she knew one thing. She had to find out. Sarah grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts. She hadn't talked to many people from back then, not since she'd pulled away from the world. But there was one person who might help, Frank Russo, a retired detective who'd worked the fire case. He'd been kind, one of the few who didn't look at her like she'd failed Emma. She found his number, her thumb hovering over the call button. Her heart pounded. This was it. Once she started, there was no going back. She thought of Emma's giggle, her tiny hand in hers. If there was even a chance her girl was out there, Sarah would fight for her. She hit call, the phone ringing in the quiet. Frank, she said when he answered, her voice breaking. It's Sarah Mitchell. I need your help. Sarah Mitchell's kitchen felt like a war room the morning after she found the box. The metal box sat on her table, its contents spread out like pieces of a puzzle she didn't know how to solve. The Polaroid of the girl who looked like Emma stared up at her, those green eyes haunting. The letter with its cryptic warning, they took her. Their watching was folded beside it. The words burned into her brain. Sarah hadn't slept, her coffee mug now a lifeline as she waited for Frank Russo to show up. Willow Creek was waking up outside, the hum of lawnmowers mixing with the chatter of kids heading to school. Sarah barely noticed. Her world had shrunk to this table, this moment. She was 45, a librarian who'd spent 15 years hiding from life, but now something was stirring in her. A spark she hadn't felt since Emma was alive. Hope maybe. Or desperation. Either way, she wasn't backing down. The doorbell rang, sharp and jarring. Sarah jumped, spilling coffee on her sleeve. She wiped it off and opened the door to find Frank, older than she remembered but still solid, like a tree that had weathered too many storms. His hair was all gray now, his face lined, but his blue eyes were sharp. He carried a thermos and a notebook, looking every bit the retired cop. Sarah, he said, his voice gravelly but warm. Been a while. Thanks for coming, Frank, she said, stepping aside. I didn't know who else to call. He nodded, no judgment in his eyes, and followed her to the kitchen. Sarah gestured at the box, her hands shaky. I found this last night. It's about Emma. Frank's eyebrows went up, but he didn't say anything, just sat down and opened the box. He studied the Polaroid, then the letter, his face unreadable. Sarah watched him, her stomach in knots. She needed him to believe her. To not think she was some grieving mom chasing ghosts. This is heavy. Frank said finally, setting the letter down. You sure you want to dig into this? Could be a cruel prank. Or worse. Sarah's throat tightened. I've thought about that. But that girl. She pointed at the Polaroid. That's Emma's face, Frank. I'd know her anywhere. If there's even a chance she's out there. I have to try. Frank leaned back, sipping his coffee. All right. Let's say this is real. The letter mentions they. Any idea who that could be? Sarah shook her head. I've been racking my brain. Back then, everyone said the fire was an accident. I didn't have enemies. I was just me. Frank scribbled something in his notebook. The fire report always bugged me. No body, no clear cause. They pinned it on a bad outlet, but it felt too neat. I was a rookie detective then, didn't have the clout to push. Maybe it's time to look again. Sarah's heart lifted just a little. Someone believed her. Where do we start? Frank tapped the Polaroid. This photo's our best lead. It's dated 2015, so we need to figure out where it was taken, who this girl is. And the letter. Someone wrote it, someone who knew something. We'll track them down. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. It sounded impossible, but Frank's steady voice made it feel real. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone in this. Their first stop was the Willow Creek Police Department, a squat brick building downtown. Frank still had friends on the force, and he figured they could pull the old fire report. Sarah hadn't been there since 2010, and walking through those doors felt like stepping into a nightmare. The smell of burnt coffee and the hum of radios brought it all back. The questions, the pity, the way everyone looked at her like she was broken. Frank led her to a records clerk, a young guy named Pete who owed him a favor. Pete dug through the archives, coming back with a thin file labeled Mitchell Residence Fire, 2010. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it. The words blurring. Faulty wiring. No human remains. Accidental. Anything stand out? She asked Frank, her voice low. He scanned the pages, frowning. This witness list is short. Only one neighbor gave a statement. Ed Grayson lived across the street. Said he saw smoke, called 911. Nothing else. Sarah's stomach twisted. Ed Grayson? He moved away right after the fire. Packed up and left, no goodbye. I always thought that was weird. Frank's eyes narrowed. Yeah, that's a red flag. Let's find him. They spent the afternoon at Sarah's kitchen table. Frank on his laptop, Sarah on her phone. Frank called old contacts, digging for Ed's whereabouts. Sarah searched online, her fingers clumsy on the keys. Ed Grayson wasn't hard to find. He'd popped up in a small town in Indiana, running a hardware store. His Facebook page showed a guy in his 60s balding with a forced smile. Think he knows something? Sarah asked, her voice tight. Maybe, Frank said. People don't just vanish after a fire unless they've got a reason. We'll pay him a visit. Sarah's heart raced. A lead, a real one. But fear crept in too. What if Ed was part of the they the letter warned about? She pushed the thought away. She'd deal with it when the time came. The next morning, Sarah and Frank hit the road for Indiana. A 4-hour drive in Frank's beat-up Chevy pickup. The radio played old country tunes, but Sarah barely heard them. She clutched the Polaroid, her thumb tracing the girl's face. Emma, she thought, the name a prayer. She imagined finding her, holding her, hearing her laugh again. But then the doubts came. What if this was a lie? What if she was chasing nothing? Frank glanced at her. You okay over there? Sarah forced a smile. Just scared. What if we're wrong? He shrugged, eyes on the road. Then we're wrong. But we won't know unless we try. You're doing this for Emma. That's enough. His words steadied her, like a hand on her shoulder. She nodded, looking out at the endless fields flashing by. For Emma. Ed Grayson's hardware store was a small, cluttered shop in a town even sleepier than Willow Creek. The bell jingled as they walked in, and Sarah's stomach churned. Ed was behind the counter, sorting nails, his face older but unmistakable. He looked up, and for a split second, his eyes widened before he masked it with a smile. Hey folks, what can I do for you? He said, too cheerful. Frank stepped forward, his cop voice calm but firm. Ed Grayson? I'm Frank Russo, used to be with Willow Creek PD. This is Sarah Mitchell. We're looking into the fire at her place back in 2010. You were a witness. Ed's smile faltered, his hands fidgeting. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Don't remember much. Sarah's heart pounded. She held up the Polaroid, her voice shaking. Then maybe you remember this. This girl. She looks like my daughter Emma. The one you said died in that fire. Ed's face went pale, his eyes darting to the photo. I don't know anything about that. I just saw smoke, called the cops. That's it. Frank leaned in, his voice low. You sure? 'Cause you left town pretty quick after. Makes me think you saw more than you told. Ed backed up, bumping into a shelf. Look, I don't want trouble. I didn't see nothing. You got the wrong guy. Sarah's chest tightened. He was lying, she could feel it. Please, she said, her voice breaking. If you know something about my daughter, tell me. She was 5 years old. She was everything. Ed looked away, his jaw tight. For a moment Sarah thought he'd crack. Then he shook his head. I'm sorry about your kid, but I don't know nothing. You should go. Frank handed him a card. Call me if your memory clears up. We'll be in touch. They walked out, the bell jingling behind them. Sarah's hands shook, anger and despair mixing in her gut. He knows something, she said, her voice low. I saw it in his eyes. Frank nodded, opening the truck door. Yeah, he's scared. We'll keep digging. Back in Willow Creek, Sarah couldn't sit still. She paced her living room. The Polaroid taped to the fridge like a beacon. Frank was at his place, making calls to track Ed's old connections. Sarah tried to focus on work, shelving books at the library. But her mind was elsewhere. Every kid who walked in reminded her of Emma. Every whisper from a coworker felt like judgment. That night, she got a text from an unknown number. Stop looking. You won't like what you find. Her blood ran cold. She called Frank, her voice trembling as she read it aloud. Save it, he said. Could be evidence. I'm coming over. Frank arrived with a pizza. Like this was just another night. But his eyes were serious as he studied the text. Someone's nervous, he said. That's good. Means we're close. Sarah hugged herself, the room feeling too big. Too empty. Close to what, Frank? What if she's not okay? He set the pizza down, his voice soft. We'll find her, Sarah. One step at a time. She nodded, but fear gnawed at her. The letter said they're watching, and now someone was texting her. Whoever they were real and they were scared. That meant Sarah was on the right track. But it also meant danger was closer than she'd thought. The next day, Sarah went to the library, needing something to do. She was sorting returns when she remembered something Frank had said about the witness list. There'd been only one name, Ed Grayson, but what about others? Neighbors, passers-by. Anyone who might have seen something that night? She pulled up old newspaper archives on the library computer, her hands steady now. The Willow Creek Gazette had covered the fire. And one article mentioned a local family, helping with donations afterward. The Thompsons, a wealthy couple who owned half the town's businesses. Sarah froze. The Thompsons had been at her house after the fire, offering condolences. But they'd always seemed off. Too polished, too perfect. She dug deeper, finding a photo of the Thompsons from 2010. They were in their 50s then, standing with the mayor, all smiles. But something caught her eye. A man in the background, blurred but familiar. Ed Grayson. Sarah's pulse raced. Ed had worked for the Thompsons, she was sure of it. She printed the article, her hands shaking. This was it, a real connection. She called Frank, her voice urgent. I found something. We need to talk about the Thompsons. Sarah Mitchell's hands shook as she clutched the printed article. The grainy photo of the Thompsons staring up at her. The library was quiet. The hum of fluorescent lights the only sound. But her heart was pounding like a drum. It was 2025 and she was 45, a librarian who'd spent 15 years grieving her daughter, Emma, lost in a fire. But now, with a mysterious letter and a Polaroid suggesting Emma might be alive, Sarah was on a mission. And the Thompsons, Willow Creek's golden couple, were at the center of it. She'd called Frank Russo, the retired detective helping her, and he was on his way. Sarah paced behind the library counter, glancing at the clock. It was almost closing time, the last patrons trickling out. She couldn't stop thinking about Ed Grayson, the neighbor who'd vanished after the fire and lied to her face in Indiana. The article she'd found linked him to the Thompsons. and that connection felt like a door to the truth or a trap. Frank walked in, his coat dusted with early snow. He looked tired but focused, his notebook tucked under his arm. "All right, Sarah," he said, keeping his voice low. "Show me what you got." She slid the article across the counter, pointing at the photo. "This is from 2010, right after the fire. The Thompsons were in the paper for some charity thing. Look in the background, Ed Grayson. He worked for them, Frank." "I'm sure of it." Frank studied the photo, his eyes narrowing. "Huh. That's no coincidence. Ed bolts town after the fire, and now he's tied to the Thompsons? We need to know more about these folks." Sarah's stomach churned. The Thompsons were untouchable in Willow Creek. Robert and Diane, both in their 70s now, owned the lumber mill, the diner, half the real estate. They'd always been polite to Sarah, sending flowers after the fire, but something about them had always felt cold, like their smiles were for show. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Frank rubbed his chin. "We dig. Quietly. The Thompsons have pull, cops, politicians, you name it. If they're involved, we need hard proof before we make a move." Sarah nodded, but fear gnawed at her. The anonymous text she'd gotten, "Stop looking. You won't like what you find," felt heavier now. Whoever sent it knew she was getting close. But close to what? Emma alive somewhere? Or a truth too ugly to face? Frank suggested they start at the library, where Sarah had access to old records. After locking up, they stayed late, the building dark except for the glow of the computer screen. Sarah pulled up everything she could find on the Thompsons: newspaper archives, property records, even social media. Frank made calls to old cop buddies, fishing for dirt. The picture that emerged was murky. The Thompsons were pillars of Willow Creek, always at church, always donating to schools. But there were whispers: shady business deals, workers at the lumber mill who disappeared after complaining about safety. One article from 2008 mentioned a lawsuit against them. Something about illegal land deals, but it was settled out of court. Sarah's eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she kept going. Then she found it. A small notice in the Gazette from 2011. A year after the fire, the Thompsons had funded an adoption agency called Hope Haven, a charity for kids in need. The agency shut down in 2013, no explanation given. "Frank," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Look at this. An adoption agency. What if Emma was taken and given to someone else?" Frank leaned over, reading the screen. "Could be something. Adoption agencies can be fronts, trafficking, money laundering, you name it. We need to know who ran this place." Sarah's heart raced, a mix of hope and dread. Emma adopted out? It sounded crazy. But the Polaroid, the letter, it all pointed to something bigger than a fire. She printed the article, her hands trembling. "How do we find out?" Frank scribbled in his notebook. "I've got a contact at the state records office. They'll have files on Hope Haven, names, addresses, maybe even kids who went through. But we gotta be careful. If the Thompsons are in this, they'll know we're sniffing around." Sarah nodded, but her mind was on Emma. She pictured her daughter, 5 years old, scared and alone, taken from the fire. The thought made her chest ache, like a bruise that wouldn't heal. She had to find her, no matter what. The next day, Sarah went through the motions at work, shelving books and smiling at kids. But her mind was elsewhere. Frank was in Columbus, digging into state records, and she felt useless waiting. She kept the Polaroid in her pocket, touching it like a talisman. Every time she looked at it, she saw Emma's face. Not the 5-year-old she'd lost, but a girl growing up alive somewhere. That afternoon she got a call from Lisa, her old friend from the daycare days. Lisa was a social worker now, and Sarah hadn't talked to her in years, but she'd reached out on a whim, hoping Lisa's job might help. "Hey Sarah," Lisa said, her voice warm but cautious. "You okay? Your message sounded intense." Sarah took a deep breath, glancing around the library to make sure no one was listening. "I need your help, Lisa. It's about Emma. I found something, proof she might not have died in the fire. I think she was taken, maybe through an adoption agency called Hope Haven. Can you look into it?" There was a long pause. "Sarah, that's a lot. Are you sure? I mean, it's been 15 years. "I know how it sounds," Sarah said, her voice cracking. But I have a photo, a letter. I'm not crazy, Lisa. Please. Lisa sighed. Okay. I'll check the state database, see if Hope Haven pops up. But Sarah, if this is real, you're poking a hornet's nest. Be careful. Sarah thanked her, her heart pounding. She felt like she was standing on the edge of something huge, and one wrong step could send her tumbling. That night, Sarah was locking up the library when she heard a noise, a scrape. Like footsteps in the alley. Her pulse spiked. She gripped her keys, the metal cold in her hand, and peered into the dark. Nothing. Just shadows and a stray cat darting past a dumpster. She laughed nervously, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she got in her car. At home, she double-checked the locks, the anonymous text replaying in her mind. Stop looking. She tried to eat, but the sandwich tasted like cardboard. She was about to call Frank when her phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number. You're digging where you shouldn't. Last warning. Sarah's blood ran cold. She snapped a screenshot and sent it to Frank, her fingers fumbling. He called right away, his voice steady but urgent. Stay put, Sarah. I'm coming over. Don't open the door for anyone. She sat on her couch, the Polaroid in her lap, every creak of the house making her jump. The Thompsons, Ed Grayson, Hope Haven. It was all connected. And someone was scared enough to threaten her. That meant she was close. But close to what? Emma or something darker? Frank arrived an hour later, his face grim. I got something, he said, spreading papers on her table. Hope Haven was shady. No proper licenses, sketchy funding. And guess who was on the board? Diane Thompson. Sarah's stomach dropped. Diane? She was at my house after the fire, acting all sympathetic. You think she took Emma? Frank nodded. It's looking that way. I also found a name, James Carver, a lawyer who handled Hope Haven's paperwork. He's in Cleveland now. We need to talk to him. Sarah's head spun. Diane Thompson, with her perfect smile and church lady vibe, involved in something like this? It was unthinkable, but the pieces were falling into place. What about the threats? She asked, showing him the new text. Frank's jaw tightened. Someone's watching. All right. Could be the Thompsons, could be Carver, could be someone we haven't found yet. We're rattling cages, Sarah. That's good, but it's dangerous. She hugged herself, fear mixing with determination. I don't care. If Emma's out there, I'm not stopping. Frank gave her a small smile, the kind that said he respected her fight. Then we keep going. Tomorrow, we head to Cleveland. But tonight you sleep with the lights on. The drive to Cleveland was tense, the winter sky gray and heavy. Sarah sat in Frank's truck, the Polaroid in her pocket, her mind racing. She thought of Emma's laugh, her tiny hand holding that stuffed bunny. If Diane Thompson had taken her daughter, Sarah would make her pay. James Carver's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel. He was a wiry guy in his 50s with a fake tan and a handshake too firm. Frank did the talking, his cop voice calm but sharp. We're looking into Hope Haven, Mr. Carver. Your name came up. Care to tell us about it? Carver's smile didn't reach his eyes. That was a long time ago. Just a charity project. Helped some kids find homes. Why the interest? Sarah couldn't stay quiet. She pulled out the Polaroid, her voice shaking. Because my daughter, Emma, might have gone through your agency. She was taken from me in a fire in 2010. I think you know something. Carver's face stayed neutral, but his hands twitched. I'm sorry about your loss, but I don't know anything about that. We followed strict protocols. You're barking up the wrong tree. Frank leaned in, his voice low. We've got records tying you to the Thompsons. And Hope Haven wasn't exactly legit, was it? You want to talk now, or wait till we bring this to the feds? Carver stood, his voice tight. I think we're done here. If you've got questions, get a warrant. They left, the air crackling with tension. Sarah's heart sank, but Frank was unfazed. He's hiding something, he said as they got in the truck. Did you see his hands? Guy's nervous. Sarah nodded, but despair crept in. Every lead felt like a dead end, and the threats were piling up. She was about to say so when her phone buzzed with a call from Lisa. Sarah, Lisa said, her voice urgent. I found something in the database. Hope Haven placed a girl in 2010. right after your fire. She's in Chicago now, goes by Lily Harper. I've got an address. Sarah's breath caught, her eyes meeting Frank's. Lily, she whispered. That's her, Frank. It has to be. He nodded, starting the engine. Then we're going to Chicago. Sarah Mitchell gripped the Polaroid so tight the edges curled, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. It was a cold February morning in 2025, and she was in Frank Russo's Chevy pickup, barreling toward Chicago. At 45, Sarah was a librarian from Willow Creek, Ohio, who'd spent 15 years believing her daughter, Emma, died in a house fire. But a mysterious letter and a photo of a girl who looked like Emma, taken years after the fire, had turned her world upside down. Now, a lead from her friend Lisa pointed to a young woman in Chicago named Lily Harper, adopted through a shady agency linked to the Thompsons. Sarah's heart pounded with hope and fear. Was Lily her Emma? Frank drove, his knuckles white on the wheel. The retired detective had been her rock, digging into the fire case with her, chasing clues from Willow Creek to Indiana to Cleveland. They'd hit roadblocks. Ed Grayson's lies, James Carver's stonewalling, anonymous threats telling Sarah to stop. But this felt different. This was real. Lily was real. You okay? Frank asked, glancing at her. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the strain of their hunt. Sarah swallowed, her throat dry. I don't know. What if it's her, Frank? What if it's Emma? What do I even say? He gave her a small smile. You'll know when you see her. One step at a time. She nodded, but her mind was a storm. She pictured Emma's face, 5 years old, all pigtails and giggles, then the girl in the Polaroid, older with the same green eyes. If Lily was Emma, what had happened to her? Who had taken her and why? The Thompsons, Willow Creek's power couple, were at the heart of it, tied to the fire and the sketchy adoption agency, Hope Haven. Sarah's stomach churned at the thought of Diane Thompson, with her fake tears and casseroles after the fire, hiding something so monstrous. The Chicago skyline loomed ahead, all steel and glass under a gray sky. Sarah's hand shook as she checked the address Lisa had sent, a small apartment near DePaul University, where Lily was a student. Sarah tried to imagine her daughter at 20, living a life she'd missed. The thought made her chest ache, like a wound that never healed. They pulled up to a brick building, its paint peeling, student bikes chained to a rack out front. Sarah's legs felt like jelly as she followed Frank to the door. He buzzed the intercom for Lily's apartment, but no one answered. Sarah's heart sank, but Frank was unfazed. Let's wait, he said, leaning against the truck. She's a college kid, probably at class or grabbing coffee. They sat in the truck, the heater humming, watching the street. Sarah clutched the Polaroid, her thumb tracing the girl's face. She thought of the fire, smoke choking her lungs, flames blocking Emma's room. She'd screamed her daughter's name, but the fire had won. The police said Emma was gone, burned to nothing. Sarah had believed them, carried that guilt for years. Now she wasn't so sure. An hour later, a young woman walked up the sidewalk, a backpack slung over her shoulder. She was tall, with dark hair and a scarf wrapped against the cold. Sarah's breath caught. Even from a distance she saw it, the way the girl moved, the curve of her jaw. It was Emma's face grown up. That's her, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. Frank, that's her. Frank nodded, his hand on the door handle. Easy, Sarah. Let's do this right. They got out, the cold biting Sarah's cheeks. She called out, her voice shaky. Lily? Lily Harper. The girl stopped, turning. Her eyes, green just like Emma's, met Sarah's, and for a moment the world stood still. Sarah's heart pounded, tears blurring her vision. It was her. It had to be. Yeah, Lily said, her tone cautious. Who are you? Sarah stepped closer, her hands trembling. My name's Sarah Mitchell. I think you might be my daughter. Lily's face went blank, then wary. What? Look, I don't know you. I think you've got the wrong person. Frank stepped in, his voice calm. We're not here to scare you, Lily. We're looking into something from a long time ago. A fire in Ohio, 2010. We think you might be connected. Can we talk? Lily backed up, clutching her backpack. I don't know anything about a fire. I was adopted when I was 5. My parents are in Wisconsin. You're freaking me out. Sarah's heart twisted. Adopted at 5, the same age as Emma. She pulled out the Polaroid, her voice desperate. Please just look at this. It's you, isn't it? Taken in 2015. I lost my daughter Emma in that fire. I think you're her. Lily glanced at the photo, her eyes widening. For a second Sarah saw something recognition maybe, but then Lily shook her head. That's not me. I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. She turned and hurried into the building, the door slamming behind her. Sarah's knees buckled and Frank caught her arm, steadying her. She's scared, he said. Give her time. Sarah sobbed, the Polaroid crumpled in her hand. It's her, Frank. I know it's her. He nodded, his voice firm. Then we'll prove it. Come on. Back in the truck, Sarah felt like she was drowning. Seeing Lily, Emma, had been everything she'd dreamed of, but the rejection cut deep. She wanted to run after her, to hold her, to make her understand. But Frank was right. Lily was scared and pushing too hard could ruin everything. Frank pulled out his notebook, scribbling. She said she was adopted at 5, right? That lines up with Hope Haven's records. We need to know who her adoptive parents are, how they got her. Sarah wiped her eyes, forcing herself to focus. Lisa might help. She's got access to adoption records. Frank nodded. Good call. And I'm gonna dig into the Thompsons' finances. If they were running a trafficking ring through Hope Haven, there'll be a money trail. Sarah's stomach churned. Trafficking. The word made her sick. Emma stolen and sold like a commodity. She thought of Diane Thompson's face, all smiles and lies. If they did this, Frank, I want them to pay. They will, he said, starting the engine. But we need proof. And we need to keep you safe. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. You were warned. Next time, you won't walk away. Her blood ran cold. She showed Frank, her hands shaking. He cursed under his breath. They're following us. We need to move fast. They checked into a cheap motel outside Chicago, the kind with flickering neon signs and thin walls. Sarah couldn't sleep, the text replaying in her mind. She sat on the bed, the Polaroid beside her, and called Lisa, her voice low to avoid waking Frank in the next room. Sarah, you're scaring me, Lisa said, her voice sleepy. Chicago? Threats? This is getting out of hand. I saw her, Lisa, Sarah said, tears spilling. Her name's Lily, but she's Emma. I know it. Can you check her adoption records? Please. Lisa sighed. I'll try. But it's tricky. Adoption files are sealed tight. I could get in trouble. I know, Sarah said. But it's my daughter. There was a long pause, then okay. I'll see what I can do. But Sarah, watch your back. Sarah hung up, her chest tight. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, Emma's face in her mind. She didn't care about the threats, the danger. She'd find her daughter, no matter what. The next morning, Frank got a call from a contact at the state police. Got something on Hope Haven, he told Sarah over coffee at a diner. The agency was funded by a shell company tied to the Thompsons. And James Carver? He's been laundering money for them for years. Sarah's pulse raced. So they took Emma. Sold her through Hope Haven. Looks like it, Frank said. But we need more. I'm meeting a guy today, an old informant who knows Carver. He might have dirt. Sarah nodded. But she couldn't sit still. I'm going back to Lily's place. I need to try again. Frank frowned. Not alone, Sarah. It's too risky. I'll be careful, she said, her voice firm. She's my daughter. Frank. I have to. He sighed, knowing he couldn't stop her. Text me every hour. If I don't hear from you, I'm coming after you. Sarah took a bus back to Lily's apartment, her heart in her throat. The street was quiet, students bustling with backpacks. She waited across the street, watching the building. An hour passed, then 2. Just as she was about to give up, Lily walked out, heading toward a coffee shop. Sarah followed, keeping her distance. Inside the shop, Lily sat alone, scrolling on her phone. Sarah took a deep breath and approached, her hands trembling. Lily, please don't run. Just hear me out. Lily looked up, startled, but didn't bolt. You again? I told you, I'm not who you think. Sarah sat across from her, her voice soft. I lost my daughter in a fire when she was 5. Her name was Emma. She had green eyes like yours, and a little scar on her hand from falling off a swing. I think someone took her. And you're her. Lily's face softened, but her eyes were guarded. I don't have a scar. And I don't remember any fire. My parents adopted me from an agency. They're good people. Sarah pulled out the Polaroid, sliding it across the table. This is you, isn't it? Look at the date, 2015. You were 10. I just want to know the truth. Lily stared at the photo, her hands shaking. I don't know. I don't remember much from back then. But this isn't me. It can't be. Sarah's heart broke, but she saw the fear in Lily's eyes. Can I ask one thing? Will you take a DNA test? Just to be sure. If I'm wrong, I'll leave you alone. I promise. Lily hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay. But if it's not a match, you stop, all right? Sarah nodded, tears spilling. Deal. Lisa came through that afternoon, arranging a discreet DNA test through a contact at a Chicago lab. Sarah and Lily went together, the air thick with tension. Sarah watched Lily swab her cheek, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment that could change everything. Back at the motel, Frank had news. His informant had given him a flash drive with emails between Carver and Diane Thompson, detailing payments for placements through Hope Haven. One email mentioned a special case in 2010, a girl placed with a family in Wisconsin. Sarah's breath caught. That was Lily's story. We've got them, Frank said, his voice grim. But we need to be smart. The Thompsons will fight dirty. Sarah nodded, her mind on Lily. The DNA results would take a few days, but she felt it in her bones. Lily was Emma. And the Thompsons had stolen her. 3 days later, the lab called. Sarah met Lily at the coffee shop, Frank by her side. Lily looked nervous, her hands wrapped around a mug. The lab tech handed Sarah an envelope, her hands trembling as she opened it. The results were clear. A 99.9% match. Lily was Emma. Sarah sobbed, covering her mouth. Lily stared at the paper, her face pale. I don't understand, she whispered. My parents, they said I was theirs. Sarah reached for her hand, but Lily pulled back. I'm so sorry, Sarah said, tears streaming. I don't know why they took you, but I've never stopped loving you. Lily stood, her voice shaking. I need time. This is too much. She left and Sarah's heart shattered. Frank put a hand on her shoulder. Give her space. She'll come around. Sarah nodded, but the pain was raw. She'd found her daughter, but the truth had torn them apart. Sarah Mitchell sat in a Chicago diner, the smell of burnt coffee and bacon filling the air. It was late February 2025, and her world was a tangle of hope and heartbreak. 45. She'd spent 15 years believing her daughter Emma died in a house fire in Willow Creek, Ohio. But a DNA test had just confirmed the impossible. Lily Harper, a 20-year-old college student, was Emma, stolen from Sarah and raised by another family. The truth was a lifeline, but it came with a cost. Lily wasn't ready to accept it, and the people who'd taken her, the Thompsons, were still out there, pulling strings. Sarah's hands shook as she held the Polaroid, the one that started it all. A girl with Emma's green eyes, taken years after the fire. Across the table, Frank Russo, the retired detective who'd been her partner in this fight, sipped his coffee, his face grim. They'd uncovered a web of lies. The Thompsons, Willow Creek's untouchable power couple, had orchestrated the fire to cover up Emma's kidnapping, funneling her through their shady adoption agency, Hope Haven. Emails from their lawyer, James Carver, proved it. But proving it in court was another story. She needs time, Frank said, breaking the silence. He meant Lily, who'd walked out of the coffee shop 3 days ago, reeling from the DNA results. She's been through a lot. Sarah's throat tightened. I know. But she's my daughter, Frank. I lost her for 15 years. I can't lose her again. Frank nodded, his eyes soft. You won't. We'll get through this. But first we take down the Thompsons. They don't get to walk away. Sarah's jaw clenched. Diane Thompson's face flashed in her mind. Those fake tears after the fire. The casseroles dropped off like she cared. All lies. Sarah wanted justice, not just for Emma but for every kid Hope Haven had torn from their families. She'd do whatever it took. Frank had a plan. The emails from Carver were damning, but they needed more, something to tie the Thompsons directly to the fire. He'd called in a favor with a reporter friend, Karen Brooks, who worked for the Chicago Tribune. Karen was hungry for a big story, and a small-town trafficking ring was front-page gold. But they had to move fast. The anonymous threats, texts like "you were warned," were escalating, and Sarah felt eyes on her every time she left the motel. Karen met them at a dive bar in Chicago, her notebook already open. She was in her 30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe. "This is huge," she said, scanning the emails Frank handed her. "If we can verify these, the Thompsons are done. But we need a smoking gun, documents, witnesses, something they can't wiggle out of." Sarah's stomach churned. What about Ed Grayson? He worked for them, saw the fire. He knows something. Frank nodded. "He's our best shot. I've got his number. Time to lean on him." Sarah's heart raced. Ed had lied to their faces in Indiana, but he'd been scared. Maybe they could break him. She thought of the letter they took her. They're watching, and shivered. The Thompsons had power, money, connections. But Sarah had something they didn't. A mother's love, fierce and unbreakable. Back in Willow Creek, Sarah and Frank set up a meeting with Ed. Karen tagged along, her recorder ready. They chose a quiet park on the edge of town, away from prying eyes. Sarah's nerves were shot. Her hands stuffed in her coat pockets to hide the shaking. The air was cold, the ground dusted with snow, and every rustle in the trees made her jump. Ed showed up late, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes darted around, his voice low. "I told you I don't know nothing. Why can't you leave me alone?" Frank stepped closer, his cop voice firm. "Because a little girl was taken, Ed. Emma Mitchell. You were there. You worked for the Thompsons. Stop lying." Sarah pulled out the Polaroid, her voice trembling. "This is her, Ed. My daughter. She's alive, and I know you saw something. Tell me, or I swear I'll scream your name to every cop in Ohio." Ed's face crumpled, his hands shaking. "You don't get it. They'll kill me. The Thompsons, they don't mess around." Karen spoke up, her voice calm but sharp. "We can protect you, Ed. Give us the truth, and you're a witness, not a suspect. Your call." Ed paced, muttering to himself. Sarah's heart pounded, every second stretching like hours. Finally he stopped, his voice barely audible. "All right, I'll talk. But you gotta keep me safe." They sat on a bench, Karen's recorder rolling. Ed's story came out in fits and starts, each word heavier than the last. He'd been a handyman for the Thompsons, doing odd jobs at their mansion. In 2010, he overheard Diane talking to Carver about moving a kid through Hope Haven. The night of the fire, Ed was at the Thompsons' place, fixing a fence, when he saw Diane leave in a hurry. Later, he heard her on the phone saying, "It's done. She's gone." "I didn't know it was your kid," Ed said, his eyes on the ground. "Not till after. They paid me to keep quiet. Said I'd disappear if I didn't. I left town the next week." Sarah's chest tightened, anger and grief crashing together. "You let them take her," she said, her voice breaking. "You let them burn my house, steal my daughter." Ed flinched. "I'm sorry. I was scared. They had cops in their pocket, the chief back then. I didn't have a choice." Frank's jaw clenched. "You've got a choice now. You'll swear to this in court." Ed nodded, his face pale. "Yeah, just don't let them find me." Karen stopped the recorder, her eyes gleaming. "This is it. With Ed's testimony and the emails, we've got enough to bury them." Sarah's hands balled into fists. She wanted to scream, to hurt someone, but she held it together. For Emma. For Lily. Karen worked fast, pulling together a story that hit the Tribune's front page a week later. Small town secrets. Ohio couple linked to child trafficking ring. The article laid it all out, the fire. Hope Haven, the Thompsons' money trail, Ed's testimony. It went viral, picked up by CNN, NBC, even trending on Twitter. Willow Creek was a circus overnight. News vans clogging Main Street. Reporters knocking on Sarah's door. The Thompsons lawyered up, denying everything, but the evidence was too strong. Police raided their mansion, seizing computers and files. James Carver turned on them, cutting a deal to avoid jail time. He confirmed Diane had orchestrated the fire to cover Emma's kidnapping, paid off the fire chief to call it an accident, and sold Emma to a wealthy couple in Wisconsin through Hope Haven. The motive? Money and power. The Thompsons had made millions trafficking kids, preying on vulnerable families. Sarah watched it unfold on TV. Her heart a mix of triumph and pain. The Thompsons were arrested, their empire crumbling. But it didn't bring Emma back. Not the way Sarah wanted. Lily was still in Chicago, grappling with the truth. Sarah had texted her, offering to talk, but got no reply. Every silence felt like losing her daughter all over again. Frank stayed by her side. His steady presence a lifeline. "You did it, Sarah," he said one night, sitting on her couch with a pizza box between them. "You got justice. Emma's safe now, even if she's not ready to come home." Sarah's eyes stung. "I just want her to know I love her. Always have." He squeezed her shoulder. "She will. Give her time." Sarah went back to Chicago a week later, alone this time. She'd called Lily, leaving a voicemail. "I'm here if you need me. No pressure. I just want you to know you're loved." She didn't expect a response, but she had to try. She was at the same coffee shop, nursing a latte when Lily walked in. Sarah's heart leaped. Lily looked tired, her green eyes guarded, but she sat down, her hands wrapped around a mug. "I got your message," Lily said. Her voice soft. I've been thinking a lot. About the test, the news, everything." Sarah nodded, afraid to speak, afraid to break the moment. "I'm so sorry, Lily. For what they did to you, to us." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I don't remember you. I want to, but I don't. My parents, the ones who raised me, they're good people. They didn't know. But I keep thinking, what if you're right? What if I'm Emma?" Sarah reached out, hesitant, and Lily didn't pull away. "You are Emma," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "But you're Lily too. I don't want to take that away. I just want to be part of your life if you'll let me." Lily wiped her eyes, a small smile breaking through. "Can we start slow? Like coffee sometimes? Maybe talk." Sarah's heart soared, tears spilling. "Yeah, coffee's perfect." They sat there, talking about small things, Lily's art classes, Sarah's library job. It wasn't everything Sarah had dreamed of, but it was a start. For the first time in 15 years, she felt like a mom again. Back in Willow Creek, the town was still reeling. The Thompsons' trial was months away, but the evidence was ironclad. Sarah became a local hero, though she hated the attention. People stopped her at the grocery store, saying things like, "You're so strong," or "You gave us hope." She just smiled. Thinking of Lily's smile, her green eyes. Sarah started writing about it all, a journal at first, then a book. She wanted other parents to know they weren't alone, that fighting for their kids was worth it. Karen, the reporter, helped her find a publisher, and Sarah poured her heart into every page. One night, she got a text from Lily. "Saw your book news online. Proud of you." Sarah cried, clutching her phone. It was a small thing, but it felt like everything. Sarah Mitchell stood in her small Willow Creek kitchen, the morning light spilling through the window. It was April 2026, a year since she'd found the metal box that changed everything. 46. She was still a librarian, still the quiet woman who shelved books and smiled at kids, but she was different now. Stronger. Whole. The Polaroid of a girl who looked like her daughter, Emma, was framed on the fridge, next to a new photo. Sarah and Lily Harper laughing over coffee in Chicago. Lily was Emma, stolen from Sarah in a 2010 house fire. Raised as someone else's daughter. Finding her had been a miracle, but keeping her was a journey. The Thompsons, Willow Creek's corrupt power couple, were behind bars, their trafficking ring exposed by Sarah's fight. Diane and Robert Thompson had orchestrated the fire to cover Emma's kidnapping, selling her through their shady adoption agency, Hope Haven. The truth had shaken the town, made national news, and turned Sarah into a reluctant hero. But for her it wasn't about headlines. It was about Lily, her Emma, sitting across from her at a diner, slowly becoming part of her life. Sarah sipped her coffee, the mug warm in her hands. She was due in Chicago later, meeting Lily for lunch. Their relationship was fragile, built on coffee dates and cautious texts, but it was real. Sarah had learned to be patient, to let Lily set the pace. It wasn't the fairy tale reunion she dreamed of, but it was enough. More than enough. Her phone buzzed with a text from Frank Russo, the retired detective who'd been her rock through it all. Trial starts next week. You ready? Sarah's stomach twisted. The Thompsons' trial was looming, and she'd have to testify, relive the fire, the lies, the years of grief. She texted back. As ready as I'll ever be. Thanks, Frank. She set the phone down, her eyes drifting to the Polaroid. The girl in the photo, Emma at 10, alive and smiling, had been her lifeline, proof that hope could survive even the darkest nights. Sarah wasn't the broken woman she'd been a year ago. She'd fought for her daughter and she'd won. Now, she was learning to live again. The drive to Chicago was familiar now, the highway stretching under a spring sky. Sarah played an old Fleetwood Mac album, the music soothing her nerves. She thought about the past year, the clues, the threats, the moment she saw Lily and knew. The DNA test had confirmed it, but Lily's fear had nearly broken her. Slowly, though, they were building something new piece by piece. Lily was waiting at their usual diner, a cozy spot near DePaul University. She was 21, her dark hair pulled back, her green eyes bright but guarded. She waved as Sarah walked in, a small smile breaking through. Hey, she said, sliding a menu across the table. I ordered fries already. Sarah grinned. Sitting down. Fries before noon? You're my kind of girl. Lily laughed and Sarah's heart swelled. It was moments like this, small, ordinary, that felt like miracles. They talked about Lily's art classes, her latest project, a painting of a stormy sea. Sarah listened, soaking in every word, every gesture. She saw Emma and Lily's laugh, the way she tilted her head. But she loved Lily for who she was now, not just who she'd been. I read your book, Lily said, picking at a fry. The one you're writing. Karen sent me a draft. Sarah's eyes widened. Her memoir, after the fire, was still a work in progress, a way to process her journey and help others. You did? What did you think? Lily hesitated, her voice soft. It's intense. I didn't realize how much you went through. All those years thinking I was gone. I'm sorry I wasn't ready to hear it at first. Sarah reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You don't have to be sorry. You were figuring it out. I'm just glad you're here now. Lily's eyes glistened, but she smiled. Me too. I want to keep doing this. Getting to know you. It's weird, but it feels right. Sarah's throat tightened, tears prickling. Whenever you're ready, I'm here. They ate, laughed, shared stories. Lily showed Sarah a photo of her latest painting, and Sarah promised to come to her art show next month. When they hugged goodbye, Lily held on a little longer, and Sarah felt like she could breathe again. Back in Willow Creek, the Thompsons' trial was a circus. News vans lined the courthouse, reporters shouting questions as Sarah walked in. She wore a simple blue dress, her hands steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Frank was there, his suit wrinkled but his eyes sharp. Karen, the Tribune reporter, sat in the gallery, her notebook ready. Ed Grayson, the Thompsons' former handyman, had agreed to testify, his statement tying Diane to the fire. Sarah took the stand, her voice clear as she told her story. The fire, the grief, the box that started it all. She described finding Lily, the DNA test, the emails proving the Thompsons' crimes. The prosecutor showed the jury the Polaroid, the letter, the financial records. Diane Thompson stared straight ahead, her face a mask, but Robert fidgeted, his eyes darting. The defense tried to rattle Sarah, painting her as a desperate mother chasing a fantasy. Isn't it true you've been unstable since the fire? Their lawyer asked, his voice slick. That you'd believe anything to feel better? Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. I believed my daughter was dead for 15 years. Then I found proof she wasn't. I fought for the truth and I found it. That's not desperation. That's love. The courtroom was quiet, the jury leaning forward. Sarah stepped down, her legs shaky but her heart steady. She'd done her part. The trial lasted 2 weeks, but the verdict came fast. Guilty on all counts: kidnapping, arson, trafficking, fraud. Diane and Robert got life sentences, their empire reduced to headlines and handcuffs. James Carver, their lawyer, took a plea deal, testifying against them for a lighter sentence. Willow Creek would never be the same, but Sarah didn't care about the town. She cared about Lily. Life settled into a new rhythm. Sarah went back to the library, shelving books with a lighter heart. Her memoir was published in the fall, hitting the New York Times bestseller list. Readers called it raw, inspiring, a testament to a mother's love. Sarah did a few interviews, but she kept them short. Fame wasn't her thing. Healing was. She and Lily met every few weeks, sometimes in Chicago, sometimes in Willow Creek. Lily started calling her Sarah. A compromise that felt right. They shared stories. Sarah told her about Emma's love for the Velveteen Rabbit. Lily showed her sketches from her childhood. One day, Lily gave Sarah a painting. A mother and daughter holding hands under a starry sky. Sarah hung it in her living room, next to Emma's old bunny. Frank stayed in touch, stopping by with pizza or bad cop jokes. He was writing a book too about his years on the force with a chapter on Sarah's case. "You're the hero," he told her once, grinning. Sarah laughed, shaking her head. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a mom. Lisa, Sarah's friend from the daycare days, became a regular at her house again. They'd sit on the porch sipping wine, talking about everything and nothing. "You're different," Lisa said one night. "Stronger. Like you found yourself." Sarah smiled, the stars bright above. "I found Emma. That's what did it." One weekend, Lily came to Willow Creek for the first time. Sarah was nervous, cleaning her house twice, baking cookies that burned at the edges. Lily arrived with a backpack and a shy smile, her green eyes taking in the small town. Sarah showed her the library, the park, the lot where their old house used to be. It was just grass now, but Sarah felt lighter standing there, Lily by her side. They ended the day at Sarah's place, sitting on the couch with hot cocoa. Lily picked up the framed Polaroid, her voice soft. "I'm starting to remember things. Little stuff, singing with you, a swing in the backyard. It's fuzzy, but it's there." Sarah's heart soared, tears spilling. "You don't have to remember everything. We're making new memories now." Lily nodded, leaning against her. "Yeah, I like that." They stayed like that, quiet and close, the weight of 15 years lifting just a little. Sarah knew it wouldn't be perfect. Lily had her own life, her own family in Wisconsin. But they had this, and it was enough. Sarah's book tour took her to Chicago in the spring of 2027. She spoke at a bookstore, reading from After the Fire to a packed room. Lily was there in the front row, her smile proud. When Sarah finished, she signed books, her hand cramping but her heart full. A woman approached, her eyes red. "Your story saved me," she said. "I lost my son, but you showed me I can keep fighting." Sarah hugged her, tears in her eyes. She'd written the book for herself, for Lily, but it was reaching others, giving them hope. That was her legacy, more than any headline. The story ends on a quiet evening in Willow Creek. Sarah and Lily are on the porch, wrapped in blankets, the air sweet with spring. They're eating ice cream, laughing about Lily's latest art project, a mural for her school. Sarah looks at her daughter, her green eyes sparkling, and feels a peace she never thought possible. "You know," Sarah says, her voice soft, "I used to think I'd never be happy again. But you changed that. You and this fight, it taught me something." Lily tilts her head, curious. "What's that?" Sarah smiles, the stars above them bright. "That love doesn't give up. It's messy, it hurts, but it's stronger than anything. It brought you back to me." Lily leans against her, her voice quiet. "I'm glad it did." They sit there, the world soft and still, a mother and daughter finding their way home.